Good morning, everybody, and welcome to TLC Live. Today, co-hosting at the studio, Bobby Everett.
Thanks.
Good morning,
Good
Bobby.
morning. Good morning
Thank
to
you
you.
so much for being with us again. And Orlando Sanchez, better known as Big O from Montana. Orlando.
Good morning, and thank you, Bobby, for coming into the studio.
Well, I love it. I'm ready for my remote host in Montana, though. I mean, you promised me I'd come out there and guest host from there.
We really need to visit Orlando. He always invites us and we never go.
Right? Yeah, we got to go. We got
We
to
gotta
take
go
him
for
up
sure,
on that.
yes. So, good morning, everybody. And we have a lot of things going on in Texas, Latino Conservatives. You guys just
Yes.
came back from San Antonio, Leadership Latino. So, you were there, Orlando also. So, tell us about how was, 2 weeks in a row with Leadership Latino, first McAllen and then San
Oh,
Antonio.
yeah, it was great. It was really great. I mean, folks, for if you're new to the show, Texas Latino Conservatives sponsors Leadership Latino, which is designed for grassroots workers, candidates. This one was special though. This is Leadership Latino Elect, where we get people who have already gone through the program and give them more intense training. I mean, we dig into messaging, we dig into fundraising, compliance, everything that you need to run a solid quality campaign. So we were down in McAllen, had a good turnout there. San Antonio was just outstanding with people that I recognized from teaching them before. But again, a whole new level of in depth. But it just shows the excitement in the Hispanic community, not just to vote, but to be part of the process, to be involved, to get out there either as an election worker or as the candidate. These people are ready to lead, and it's exciting. It was a
And
lot of fun.
and this is a very important year, midterm elections, and I want to remind everybody that we have till October 11 to register to vote. This is a very important year. Every year is important when it comes to elections, but this year it's something very special,
Yeah.
and not only in Houston, Harris County, but in Texas and around the country.
Exactly. I mean, people are frustrated about the way that the country's going, and I don't think they've seen, at least in my lifetime, such a dramatic turnaround from where things were in a good position to just gas prices, inflation, the border, you name it, and it shocked them. So you're right. There's such a need to get involved, and we've seen it. I'm sure Orlando's going to speak about it with the polling that we see among Hispanics. They're ready to turn. They're ready to vote Republican, and this is the wave that I think you're going to see that.
Yeah, we want you to talk about Orlando.
Well, as Bobby mentioned, we concluded a one of a kind poll in the state of Texas where we surveyed 1,200 registered Hispanic voters in certain regions of Texas, namely South Texas, the RGV, the exurbs and suburbs in large counties where the Hispanic vote is growing towards the conservatives, and then, of course, rural Texas, mostly up around West Texas. And what we discovered was pretty amazing. So, this survey is going to serve as our roadmap for the next 10 years. And of course, we're not going to share all the details of the survey because that's our proprietary information on how we're going to keep Texas red, keep it conservative, and keep it moving in the right direction. But some interesting stuff from the poll. More particularly, 61% of Latinos surveyed were disliked, were unsatisfied with the Democratic Party. And when we drilled down and asked them why, handouts, welfare stood out. Hispanics are hardworking, entrepreneurial, and they don't want people getting handouts from the government. Um, they were also dissatisfied with the economy, the direction of the country. They were very dissatisfied with the rate of inflation. They blame the current administration for that. We also asked a very interesting question is how do you identify yourselves to your friends and your neighbors and your family? And most Hispanics responded that they identified themselves as Americans first, and then second, right behind that was Texans. Very few went with the ethnic identifiers like Hispanic or Latino. So it just tells us that Hispanics want to integrate into the society, into our country, into our culture. And this is no different than what historically has happened in the United States with immigrant groups, whether it be the Irish or whether it be the Italians. We know that they have moved in. There's sort of the acculturation process where you're first time immigrants and then second generation are all moving into the culture, and then there's political actualization, and then the final phase is mobilization. Hispanics are sort of between actualization and mobilization. We're not quite to mobilization yet, but we're getting there. And the more we move into this political mobilization, the broader, the larger the Hispanic vote's going to be. And so that's the struggle for us. And as conservatives in the state of Texas, if we get to about 50% of the vote, we continue to hold Texas as a conservative state in when it comes to election results. So we're doing quite well. Incidentally, in our poll, we also discovered that for the first time, on a generic ballot, and a lot of people don't know what generic ballot means, but that means when you ask people, how would you vote for the upcoming elections? Would you vote for the Republican candidates or the Democrat candidates? In Texas, among Hispanics, the generic ballot is tied 43%, 43%. So that's really good opportunities for us. I could speak for about another half hour on the poll. We don't need to do that, other than to say that if we execute as conservatives in Texas, keep reaching out with a message of hope and opportunity, economic prosperity, gains for our children and grandchildren, we conservatives are going to do quite well in Texas.
Amen. And I want to remind everybody that if you guys want to ask questions during the show, you can call us at 281-833-3333, 281-833-3333. But also, you can ask questions in the feed, in the comments, in the Facebook Live or in YouTube. You can write your question, and I will read it, and we will try to answer all your questions. So, as you were mentioned, Bobby, earlier, you said midterms elections, it's definitely very important, not only because inflation, economy, all the situation that we're living right now in the country, but something that also concern at all communities, not only Hispanic, not everybody, and not only in Houston, but around the country, it's public safety.
Right.
We're afraid to go out because now, even if we drive, we can get killed. Just going to Walgreens, going to the supermarket, going to do or to run errands, simple things, we can get killed.
Right.
And either us or our family or our friends, and that's been going on. Houston is leading in homicides. This is very sad because now we're beating New York.
Right.
We're
Can you
beating
imagine?
LA, Chicago.
Right.
This is not a good place to be number one for us in Houston.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a major, major issue. I mean, Orlando mentioned some with the border and the economy. Crime is a major issue across the country. I was looking at some polling recently. Since 2016, it hasn't registered in the minds of Americans higher than it is now. 80% are concerned about rising crime, very concerned that once they thought their neighborhoods were safe, they're no longer safe. And they're trusting Republicans. You see this trend over and over again where if you ask which party can better handle it, it's the Republicans. And of course it is, because you have these judges, and we're going to get to some of this later, where they're letting criminals out, career criminals out with little to no bail. And guess what? They commit crimes, and tragically they commit serious crimes. American people don't want that. They're very tired of it. So they're looking for a change. And one of the stats that I saw just recently, when you talk about who's concerned about crime, unfortunately, it falls on partisan lines, and I just don't understand that, where Republican voters are more concerned that crime is an issue. And with Democrats, ever since George W. Bush, where there was 61% that thought crime was a major issue, it has kept falling over the years till 43% now. So as it's spiking across the country, Democrats are less concerned about it. And that is something that the American people just do not understand and they don't agree with. We need to be strong on crime. We need to protect our neighborhoods. We need to protect our households. And that is a message that will resonate in this election for sure.
And
Let
that's
me
why
jump
it
in.
was,
Let me jump in real quick, Bobby. I want to say something because that's an
yeah.
important point. When you get to be my age, and you can tell people that you've been in Texas politics for a quarter century, as I have, let me just give you some observations. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the state of Texas basically had quit building capacity for the prisons for our most violent criminals. And as a result, the Texas Department of Paroles was paroling violent criminals. And the way they paroled them is they just opened the doors, they let out violent criminals, and they would give them a voucher, mostly in Huntsville, Texas, but other prisons across the state of Texas, to ride a bus. Well, where would they go? They'd go to major metropolitan areas like Houston and Dallas. And what happened in the late 80s and the early 90s is that crime spiked out of control. Not only was the state not building capacity to house violent criminals, but the judges in Harris County, both the family courts were a disaster, the criminal courts were a disaster. And so what happened is in the early 90s, the public said enough is enough and swept in conservatives who they knew were going to be enforcing the penal code in Texas and making violent criminals pay for their crimes. Now we're seeing a repeat of that. And what's happening is, that people are realizing that the first job of government, the reason we have civil society, the reason we pay taxes, foremost is for the protection of our citizens. And so we're repeating the same scene, Bobby, and you're exactly right. I think the general public, again, is going to realize that conservatives do a better job of making sure that the penal code is enforced and that the criminal courts do their jobs and that the whole criminal justice system work together to protect society.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, those points were excellent, and you got to wonder, why does it go in this cycle? If we saw that, like you said, in releasing violent criminals, you saw the results that the American people or Texans had to stand up. And Orlando, now we're going through it again. You would have thought we'd learned the first time. I don't understand the liberal mindset to be so soft on these criminals, where the stats and the history are clearly against those types of policies.
Yeah, people can remember way back. I mean, I'll just take you back to the early 90s. There were three horrific crimes in Houston that really drew everybody's attention to what the heck's going on in the criminal justice system. One was a young lady by the name of Tracy G. coming home at Braeswood and 610 late at night on a weeknight when three violent criminals shot her, dragged her out of her car, ran her over. No one will forget Tracy G. And then there was a young lady by the name of Pena and Earhart that were walking along T.C. Jester, along the railroad tracks on the bayou out there. And they were violently raped and killed, again, by thugs. And so, again, we're back at that period, and everybody knows who runs Harris County are the liberal Democrats who are just having a turnstile at the courthouse. Yeah, you might get picked up by the police, you might be charged, but when you go to the Harris County courts, you're going to get let off.
And that's why a group of murders victims form a super PAC that now it's called Stop Houston Murders, that is launched in July 27. Today, I'm going to show you a video of that day of the press conference that when a group of family relatives that lost their loved ones started this PAC, and they are, raising their voice and saying, enough, it's enough.
Right, absolutely.
My name is Chuck Cook. I welcome you this morning. Thank you for being here. We're here to introduce to the community the Stop Houston Murders PAC. We're going to talk about who we are and why we formed this PAC. Who we are is we're a bipartisan group of ordinary citizens, sons and daughters, parents and grandparents, brothers and sisters of murdered Houstonians. We're comprised of various races, sexes, ages. We live in different parts of Houston, but the thing that binds us together, our common bond, is that we've all lost loved ones to violent criminals who've been let out on bond or no bond. Why we formed this PAC was to educate the public, remove those responsible from office, and restore a functioning criminal justice society to Houston.
And that is Chuck Cook. So we have him today on the show. Chuck, welcome to TLC, which is here you talking on July 27. And of course, one of the reasons you're leading this group is because your mom got murdered on 2020. So welcome to TLC and thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Chuck, tell us your story first, and why don't you talk about your mom? Why did that happen in 2020, and how do you become part of this organization?
Thank you for that opportunity. I always look for an opportunity to brag on Mom. My mom was 80 years old. She was a very short and plump lady, had reading glasses on her nose. She was always knitting, always cooking for the family. Her joy is when the family came over and visited, and she got an opportunity to cook for us and spend time with us. She was like everybody's grandma. She was just a perfect lady. She walked with a cane. She was fairly disabled. But what happened, Andrea, is that she went to Walgreens in 2020 just to run some errands. And she went in, took care of her business. She had parked in a handicap spot right outside of the entrance. She wasn't 8 feet from the door. But she walked out, and a known felon named Randy Lewis stabbed her to take her car and her purse. And she laid there on the hot asphalt of the Walgreens parking lot dying while this man rummaged through her stuff. Now, this guy had 67 prior arrests, and he was out on 2 felony PR bonds, which are get out of jail free cards. And was let out by one of these liberal judges that are in the courthouse right now.
Mr. Cook, I just want to say, I mean, just listening to the story, it's just tragic, you know, and so the news is going to hit you that you lost your mom, but when you got the news, when you did the research and looked into the person who did it and that kind of criminal history, what were you thinking? I mean, how did that, you know, change your opinion of the criminal justice system or just society in general?
Yeah, thanks for that, Bobby. You know, it really opened my eyes to what was going on. I was really just not aware, which is why one of the things that we want to do with Stop Houston Murders is to educate the public. We got to get these stories out there, and we need to have the folks understand what is really going on in our city and why. The thing that I felt after I learned all that I had learned, Bobby, was anger, obviously.
Right.
And then anger turned to resolve. I was resolved to do something about it. This can't continue. We don't want this to happen to anybody else. The sad thing is that my mom's case is not isolated. I mean, there's, at the last count, I think there was about 190 other victims that have died at the hands of dangerous criminals that are let out on bond.
Yeah, it's just incredible, and let me say, I have not been moved by a website as much as I've been moved by yours and the work that you've done. I think we're going to probably dive into it and talk about it a little bit more. But the crimes tab, the crimes page, when you read that, What shocks me the most, I think, is not just the crimes that were perpetrated, but really the criminal history of these people.
Right.
Over and over again, these offenders, and then they get out. It's just unbelievable, and I commend you for putting this out there so people can know. I live in Fort Bend. I run the Fort Bend GOP. We feel the same thing as our neighbors in Harris County, and anything that we can do to turn this around, we're going to be out there.
I want to make a comment, Mr. Cook. I want to also express the sympathies to you and your family. Unbelievable what your mother had to go through. I just don't understand. But I got to tell you guys that I spent several years as a probation officer for Harris County. I was assigned to 2 felony courts and 2 misdemeanor courts. I was a probation officer doing one of the largest crime waves back when the homicide rate was approaching over 600 in Houston back in the early 90s. And I suspect that you heard me talk about this. But, I want people to understand that public policy has an impact on the quality of our lives. In other words, what happens in the criminal justice system, what happens at the Harris County courts, what the commissioner's court have done with the bail bond system, what happens in the district attorney's office has an impact on us. And it's very important. So I just want to get your comment. Here's how in general the liberals operate. They blame guns as the cause for murders. Well, everyone knows that guns don't discharge by themselves. So what happens is, in Harris County, they believe that smash and grabs are nonviolent crimes, right? When somebody breaks the window to our car and they go in and they steal our possessions, that's considered nonviolent. But here's what happens. People don't realize this. In the smash and grabs, they take guns of citizens that are legally carrying a firearm to protect themselves because government won't. And when they take these firearms, these criminals who have repeat offenses in Texas go sell them in the black market. Those guns are then used in crimes. Well, what does the city of Houston do? They have a buyback program, right? So they'll pay you to turn in the gun that you stole from a law-abiding citizen. I mean, is that any way to address the violent crime in Harris County and in the city of Houston? And I just want to ask you for your opinion on that, Mr. Cook.
Orlando, I appreciate that question. It is absolutely crazy. It is absolutely insane. Now, the crime problem may be a little complicated in that it is far-reaching. But one of the things that I want to get across to the people is this. We don't need a politician. We don't need legislation. We don't need new laws to help impact the crime wave that's going on. What we need is judges who are going to keep these criminals in jail. The buck stops with the judges. And the good news is we, the voters, have a say that who's our judges. And in 2018, the Democrats took over all of the judge positions in Harris County. And then that's when, and you'll see from our chart on the website, stophoustonmurders.com, that trend started to go up dramatically since then. It's very easy to correlate today's crime wave and the election of these judges. See, the buck stops with the judges. They have the power to keep dangerous criminals off the streets. They have the discretion to set the amount of bond. But they side with the criminals by letting them back on the streets, and they betray the public that they're elected to serve. They've got to go. And as I said, we, the voters, have a way of doing that, and that is to turn out on election day and vote these guys out of the court.
Well said.
Before we go with you, Chuck, to talk about Stop Houston Motors, I want to invite also Sara Mejia. She is a sister of a motor victim. And I want to hear her story because her sister got killed last year in 2021 when we end 2021 with 71% more murder victims than any other year in decades. So the numbers are crazy, insane, and it's not only raising fear in our community, in our families, but we need to do something in November because this it needs to stop. So welcome, Sara. Bienvenida, Sara. Muchas gracias por tu tiempo, and we want to hear your story with your sister.
Good morning, Ms. Gomez. Thank you so much for having me. My sister, Marta Medina, she was killed last September. It's going to be a year. That morning, she went to buy breakfast for herself and her daughter. She was going to have breakfast with her. So she went to the store, and when she walked out the store, she was approached by these two African Americans. One of them pulled her purse, and then they got into the car. She fell to the ground, and she was run over by one of them, well, by the driver. And this murder has impacted all of us, especially me, because, well, I wouldn't say especially me, but I was really surprised because I work in the Harris County jail, the Harris County system, the courthouses, and I never thought something like this would happen to me because I used to see so many cases from assault to murder to drug arrest. And that morning I was at noon I was also supposed to have lunch with my sister. So I gave her a call. She never called back. I called her back again, and she didn't call me. So later on, my nephew and my nieces, they came to my house and they told me the bad news. I was really sad and I was angry, but you know, it doesn't matter how angry I am. I'm not going to bring my sister back just by getting angry. So I was invited to join this group, the Stop Houston Murders, and I am involved in trying to do something for our community, not only the Latino community, but all the communities, because we are all being impacted in a way or another by these criminals that are being let out of jail in low criminal bonds. And I am referring specifically to Judge Hillary Younger in Court 248. If she hadn't let this criminal who had a long history since 1998, my sister should still be alive. But she has blood in her hands. She took her from our family. So we need to replace all these judges that are not doing their job correctly, and they are not that they don't have the lives of the voters in their mind. So we need to remove them from office.
Ms. Mejia, I just wanted to jump in there, and I appreciate you sharing your story. And I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm glad that you're stepping forward and getting involved. And I just want to ask you, like, what direction do you think we should go as a government and a society? I want to echo something really quickly that Orlando said. He really nailed it. How the left, the Democrats, they don't. There's this disconnect where they're blaming the guns as if they fire from themselves. If you look at the last 5 years, something that is spiking across the country is people getting in their cars and driving into crowds, killing 4, 5, 6 people at a time. And it's going up and up. So are we going to change car laws? You need to look at what's going on in society. So given that and your involvement to step forward, what are you hoping to accomplish with the website, and then your involvement when you see these other people that have gone through tragedies like you?
Well, first of all, we need to make the public aware that they have to choose. When November comes, they have to make wiser choices in electing their judges, because beginning with Lina Hidalgo also, because when she was confronted by us, she was blaming the bail bond houses on these murders. And that is not true, because the judge is the one that sets the amount of bail, whether zero or low bounds. So all the judges, whether they are Democrats or not, they are just passing the blame from one to another. So we need to be very careful who we elect as our representatives in government, especially to mind the lives of other people. As I said, my sister cannot come back in any way, but we can prevent other murders, other families from going through the same pain like Shock and myself are going.
Orlando. And you're mute, Orlando. You're mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that as the senior citizen involved in politics, as I said, for more than 25 years in Texas, I like to give a little context about public policy because at the end of the day, I know you folks as citizens, as taxpayers, as voters may not be partisan like we are, and I appreciate that, and I respect that. But let me give a little context. Many decades ago, there was a state senator from the Pasadena area and Clear Lake area by the name of Senator Jerry Patterson, a former Marine pilot. And this was back during the last big crime wave in the 80s and early 90s. And Senator Patterson wrote legislation to allow citizens to apply, law abiding citizens who had a criminal background check, who submitted their fingerprints, who passed a psychiatric test and evaluation by the Department of Public Safety in Texas, to obtain a permit to carry a weapon to protect themselves. At the time, his colleague, Senator Rodney Ellis, got on the floor of the Senate and just screamed that if we gave law abiding citizens a right to protect themselves, there would be mayhem in the streets, blood on the streets. Well, 25 years later, citizens that have applied for a concealed carry permit rarely, if ever, committed any crimes. And so this same senator that has always been on the side of limiting citizens' ability to protect themselves and has been on the side of the violent criminals is now on the Harris County Commissioner's Court. He was instrumental in guiding a young lady who had no political experience, no political background, no understanding of the penal code of the state of Texas, no understanding how the criminal justice system and particularly the courts work. Namely, her name was Lena Hidalgo. And so Commissioner Rodney Ellis, has been driving this policy to diminish or eliminate the bail bond system in Harris County and has resulted in the crime wave that we see today. So my heart goes out to both of you, but I wanted to tell you that you are absolutely correct. Elections have consequences. We've seen this movie before. In the 80s, when the liberal Democrats were in charge, crime and violent crime was out of control in Texas. And now that they're in charge in Harris County, we're watching the same movie over again.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez.
I wanted you guys, Chuck and Sara, to send a message to the community because everything for you guys is before and after this tragic. As you said, Chuck, this opened your eyes. Now you're more informed of what is going on. Now you know that it's not just the police or the officer's job to keep the public safety. It's many people involved in this. It's many people to blame. But also us as a citizen, we have a big responsibility when it comes to elect these people. So tell us your thoughts, Chuck and Sara, what we can tell our community to help the society and our city to prevent this tragic to another families.
Thank you for that opportunity. As I said earlier, the crime wave it may be complicated, but one of the things that's very clear is that in 2018, the Democrats took over the Harris County Judge courts. And since then, crime has skyrocketed. And it's because Their job is really to seek justice for crimes that have already occurred and to limit the impact of repeat offenders to society. But they don't do that. They legislate from the bench using a failed social experience. They're not implementing the laws, but rather their philosophies. And that's what we need to be clear about. Again, we can make a difference. We can go out and we can vote. Get these people out of the office. It's not a right or left issue. It's about the safety of the community. We need those who will restore accountability and consequences to the criminal justice system. The buck stops with the judges. Get rid of these judges, and we will lower the crime.
Sara?
I do agree with Chuck is saying. You know, we have to be very careful who do we elect as our next judges, because if we continue this, Houston is going to be the #1 in crime. And it's not only in one area, it's in all the areas. Every single day you can see someone was shot, someone was killed by someone who was out in the bond. And it doesn't matter what the amount of the bond is. Some people, they are let in $10,000, $5,000 bond. Is that how much a life is worth? A life of our beloved? $5,000 when the judges have, they are using their discretion in an incorrect way, because that is immoral to let someone who has been arrested so many times, 76 times, like in a case of Chuck's mom killer, 76 times. He should be in jail. He should have been in jail. Also, in the case of my sister, this criminal, he had a previous homicide. Nevertheless, Judge Unger let him out on bail bond. I asked our public to please make a wise decision and let's remove these judges. Get yourself informed on who you're going to have to represent you next November. Thank you.
Chuck, I wanted you to talk more about the organization. I know you guys just started less than a month ago with a group of families. Let's talk about the organization and how other families of victims can join this movement and help you guys to help.
Yeah, thank you for that. First I just want to back up Martha. Martha's sister, elderly, my mom, 80 years old. They're the vulnerable of the vulnerable. But it's not even safe enough in this community to go to Walgreens on a Saturday morning or a McDonald's for breakfast. That's how crazy it's become. So that's why we started StopHoustonMurders.com. We want to bring some sanity back to this chaos. I'm sorry, Andrea, you'll have to repeat your questions. I got off on a tangent.
I wanted you to talk more about the organization. You guys started like less than a month ago. So tell us, remind the viewers that probably they connect later on the program. So remind the viewers, what is the organization about it? What is the purpose? And how other families that it's been also relatives of the victims of homicides can help you guys or can join the organization.
Thank you. So we're just a group of normal, everyday citizens. We're bipartisan. We're sons and daughters, parents and grandparents, brothers and sisters of murdered Houstonians. I have various races, various political persuasions, various sexes, various ages. So we're a good cross-section of all of the Houston community. The thing that binds us together, that brought us together, was that our loved ones have been murdered by criminals who have been let out on bond in the last few years by Democrat judges who took control of Harris County in 2018. So we formed this to stop the carnage of crime underway in our city by, one, educating the public, two, removing those responsible from office, and three, restoring a functioning criminal justice system in Houston. You can go to stophoustonmurders.com and get more information. But and you can join our cause.
People can join the cause not only like maybe if they wanna if they're families of victims, but also if it's just somebody that wanna help you guys, maybe donating, maybe volunteering. So tell us about that.
Yeah, great. That's what we need. We need boots on the ground. We got to get the word out, and we can't do it by ourselves. So we really need the help of the community to do that. Certainly, financial support is great. We plan on getting billboards, running ads, yard signs, and those things do cost money. But more than that, we need to pass the word. We need folks out there talking to their neighbors and educating them. As I said, I had no idea it was this bad, and I suspect there's quite a few people out there that have the same naivete.
Marta, quiero que hagas la invitación tú en español a nuestra comunidad hispana que habla, que prefiere el mensaje en español. Cuéntanos un poco de la organización y cómo ellos también pueden ayudarlos a ustedes, sean ellos familiares de víctimas o no.
Buenos días, me llamo Sara Mejia. Esta organización que se llama Stop Houston Murders ha sido organizada por las familias de las personas que hemos sufrido la pérdida de un familiar a manos de criminales que han sido dejados salir en libertad bajo fianza por los jueces liberales. Este grupo es para prevenir que otras familias pasen también por las mismas situaciones que las que estamos pasando nosotros. Grupo es un grupo bipartidista que no tiene de ciudadanos comunes y corrientes y que estamos unidos. Lo único que nos tiene unidos aquí, desgraciadamente, ha sido que que fuimos víctimas del crimen en la ciudad de Houston. Somos diferentes grupos étnicos, socioeconómicos, y vivimos en diferentes áreas de la ciudad. No todos somos hispanos, habemos de todas las razas, y todos hemos sido impactados por el crimen que estos jueces, podría decir, que han traído a nuestra ciudad. Les pedimos que por favor a nuestra comunidad se involucren en este grupo de parar Stop Houston Murders, y ustedes pueden afiliarse a nosotros, ya sea ayudando económicamente, pueden hacer donativos. Los invitamos a que nos apoyen y que logremos que estos jueces sean removidos de su cargo, puesto que no les importan las vidas de las personas de Houston. El día de mañana puede ser usted quien esté hablando aquí. Entonces le invito que por favor tomen una buena decisión, una decisión que sea informada de qué jueces van a elegir ahora en noviembre, porque es importante para nosotros como sociedad y para las vidas de su familia. Y por favor, apoyen a este grupo Stop Houston Murders. Muchas gracias.
Sara, thank you so much. Muchas gracias. And Chuck and Sara, thank you so much. So the website is stophoustonmurders.com. You guys can go there and make your donation or become a volunteer or just look for support. We need to support this group because, as Sara said, tomorrow it can be us.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what this site just really drives home, that it can happen to anybody. And so that means it takes everybody out there to get involved and make a difference. And thank you, folks, for doing what you're doing and providing this service, because whether it's Fort Bend or Harris County, these judges, the Democrats just swept them in and it's up to us, the people, to sweep them back out and restore some sanity to our justice system so that people can feel comfortable in their homes or feel comfortable going to a Walgreens to run an errand and know that they're going to be safe in this community. Thank you so much.
I
Thank you,
also want to
Gus.
I want to thank you because, again, as an observer of many things in Texas, I can tell you the power of grassroots organizations such as what you, Sarah, and Mr. Cook have started. I remember years ago, we had a similar situation with drunk drivers across the nation and in Texas. And an organization formed called MAD, MADD, Mothers
Mm-hmm.
Against Drunk Drivers. And they worked very diligently to change statutes and change legislation and public policy to protect the victims because the courts were letting out repeat offenders of drunk driving arrests, which would ultimately lead in tragic deaths. And then again, in the 80s and 90s, there was an organization that formed called Parents of Murdered Children. Uh, People underestimate the power of a grassroots movement. And this is a grassroots movement started here in Harris County by the loved ones of victims of violent crimes. And it takes courage. I mean, Ms. Mejia and Mr. Cook could either become victims psychologically or traumatically, but they've taken the step to get involved. And this is the beauty of our country that we allow the citizens to get involved and educate the community so that we can change things that are affecting us. I want to congratulate you both for your courage and stepping up, and no better way to honor the memory of your loved ones. Sara, your sister, Mr. Cook, your mom. Just from what you've told me, both Martha and Rosalie appear to be just beautiful, beautiful people, law abiding, contributing members of society, loved by their family, and they're the tragic victims of irresponsible behavior by an elected judiciary, and that cannot stand. So thank you for your involvement.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez.
Thanks for letting us on there. And I'd like to finish with this. Whatever the politics, we as Houstonians must all agree on this. These judges' conduct are a violation of their oath and a complete dereliction of their duty to our community. And together we can end judge violence. It's our community. Everyone has a voice. They can make a difference. And we're here with our voices to demand change and invite you to join us.
Well said.
Amen.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you so much. Orlando.
Well, yeah, good show. Let me just again recap because Bobby will
Yeah.
appreciate this. Andrea, you're awfully young, but there's some there's
Oh,
On the other hand, I'm super
it's
old,
like
right?
you're older than me.
Right?
Wow.
Oh my gosh, I'm
He
ancient.
just called you old.
Right.
I'm gonna try to wax eloquently, Bobby, but I've always said that society works when we have good mind, body, and soul. And I observe the left in this country, and not all Democrats are bad. God knows I have some Democrat friends that are just hardworking, want to do the right thing. But in general, everybody has to realize that there's a leftist movement in this country. And so when you look at society and mind and body and soul are no good, and you look at policies that affect that, with respect to the mind, you look how teachers are leaving in droves. In Harris County, in the city of Houston, and I'm sure across the state of Texas, as reported in the news, we can't find teachers. Teachers are leaving education. Teachers have never been in it for the money because God knows you don't become rich as a teacher. But teachers are getting tired of this woke, society that wants to separate our children by race and ethnicity and teach them that just because you were born with a male organ or a female organ doesn't necessarily make you male or female, that you get to choose your sex. I mean, this is crazy stuff. So yes, that's why people are abandoning education. With respect to the body, I remember when the liberals had control of the state of Texas. The out of control trial lawyers were suing doctors to the point, Bobby and Andrea, where you couldn't find an OBGYN in South Texas because nobody could afford to practice medicine for fear of the trial lawyers coming after them. And so you've seen the disastrous effects of the left's policy. And with respect to the soul, everybody knows the soul needs to be nourished. But what does the left do? The very first thing when we have a pandemic or some kind of medical emergency, they want to shut down churches. They want to crush the voice of the Christian conservatives in this country. And so no wonder society is kind of going off the rails. So there are consequences to bad choices in elections that result in bad public policy. And I'm glad that Mr. Cook and Miss Mejia are out educating the public. Enough said. I'm going to toss it back to you guys. Great show. Again, Bobby, thank you for helping Andrea out. God knows she needs all the help she can get.
Oh, boom.
Oh my God. First you're old, then I need help. Okay, but you know what? I am humbled to accept that yes, I need help, that I miss you when you're not in the show. And I am so glad that I have Bobby next to me because, you know, guys, it takes a village to make a good show. So it's a team
You have
effort.
to keep us all together.
Of course, yes.
Thank you,
Anyway,
Orlando. I appreciate that.
and that's why they called him a big O.
That's right.
For opinion.
That's right. Awesome. Good stuff. I loved being on today. This was a great show. In all my experience doing this, I've never been in the situation to interview people that were victims of tragedy. This was a first for me, and it's wow. It was powerful to hear.
I've been doing this for 25 years, and it doesn't get easy.
Right.
Every time is as hard as the first time that I did it 25 years ago. It's really hard. I am also, I lost my brother 12 years ago, so I know the feeling. I know the fear every day to lose somebody that you love, and it's not. It's something very difficult that you don't understand till you are in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me on board. I look forward to next week.
Of course.
Awesome.
And thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to show again the website of StopHoustonMotors.com, StopHoustonMotors.com. Please help them join the cause, donate, or become a volunteer. And this is something that involves the Houston and the area and everybody, every family, whether you're being a victim or not, whether you have a relative that got killed or not. This is every day that we're facing, we're seeing on the news, we're reading it on the news, we're watching it. And as Chuck and Sara said, we can be the next one.
Absolutely.
Or our family, our relatives, our friends can be the next one. That's why we need to unite it, and we need to be together and strong. And I want to remind everybody, October 11 is the last day for you to register to vote. This is a very important elections, and midterm elections is in November, and we need to educate ourselves. I wanted to ask Orlando before we go off the show, because we always pay attention to the big races, and people don't think that voting for a judge is a big race. Sometimes people don't even know that those positions it's to
That's
vote.
Right.
So they think that they've been appointed or something like that. So I wanted you give us your political background and knowledge on this.
Well, it's just going to be short. You've heard the saying, all politics is local. It is. If you're a small business owner and somebody comes into your store and shoplifts, that's taken care of locally. President Biden doesn't take care of it. Your senators don't take care of it, and your congressmen don't take care of it. When a water line breaks in front of your house, you call the city of Houston, your city council person, and Public Works and Engineering comes out. And when your garbage needs to be picked up, it's the city. When you need a police officer, it's your local police officer, whether it's the Harris County Sheriff or the Houston Police Department or your local constable. So everything is local. The off year elections are important because you're electing commissioners to the commissioners court. Next year, you'll be electing, if you live in the city of Houston, city council members and mayors. And yes, everybody likes to turn out and vote for the president of the United States. But when was the last time the president fixed your pipe, picked up your garbage, responded either in an ambulance or with a gun to protect your family in the event of a violent crime? It never happens. And so everything is local. It's your local elected officials that run things in your community. That's why it's important to vote, be attuned to public policy, what makes good policy, what makes bad policy. So thank you for the question. Andrea, I've got to jump off because I have another meeting in a few minutes. Bobby, we'll see you back in Houston. Take care, guys.
See you, Orlando.
Okay, Orlando, gracias. Nos vemos pronto. Chao, chao. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching us today, for joining us today. We saw a lot of comments and people participating. Hopefully next Wednesday somebody call.
Yeah.
We're just praying for somebody call and ask questions. But anyway, thank you so much. And please visit us on TexasLatinoConservatives.com, TexasLatinoConservatives.com. Also join the cause, become a member. It's only $35 a year. And check it out for Leadership Latino. We have just 2 classes in McAllen last Saturday. No, two Saturdays ago, and then San Antonio last Saturday. And we keep you posted on the next class. Of course, Bobby is going to be there as always. He is part of the team. So just check it out. This is a very important class that you can take at no cost. So TexasLatinoConservatives.com, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Nos vemos el próximo miércoles. Chao, chao.